Hiya! Welcome to LSB Feasters Radio Channel, where we keep great radio from the past alive. Today, we are going to Boston and the Dean of Talk Radio. I'm talking about Jerry Williams. Jerry spent most of his life on the radio doing talk radio, rabble-rousing, and just pretty much stirring the pot. Jerry came to Boston from WIBG in Philadelphia in the late 1950s to go to work at WMEX. He spent many years there until he got the call to go to Chicago. And he went to WBBM, where he did talk radio for a short period till the station flipped format to all news. He went back to Boston and then spent many years on WBZ. After he left WBZ, he had to deal with a non-compete, so he spent some time in Hartford and Philadelphia, but he came back to Boston and he spent many years on WRKO. Jerry was really good at what he did, and I'm telling you, he did not mind stirring things up one bit. If you haven't heard the Dean of Talk Radio, check him out. It's Jerry Williams on WBZ Boston.
So far, her testimony has only spelled out the bizarre details of how she became a member of the Manson family. The Nixon administration has changed directions to follow the path of previous presidents in consulting the American Bar Association before selecting Supreme Court nominees. Attorney General John Mitchell said the administration will now seek the opinion of the ABA's Committee on the Federal Judiciary before recommending a nominee to the president. Presidents Kennedy, Johnson, and Eisenhower nodded in the ABA's direction by giving its committee the names of appointees about 24 hours in advance of the public announcement. The postponement of the first launching of America's multi-warhead missile last Friday was reportedly caused not by mechanical failure, but by a Russian trawler bristling with electronic equipment. A reliable informant in the Pentagon says the Russian ship came within 200 yards of the nuclear sub James Madison as it prepared to launch the Presidium missile, forcing the mission to be scrubbed. Former Air Force Colonel Benjamin O. Davis has turned a deaf ear to the pleas of Cleveland Mayor Carl Stokes and submitted his resignation. Davis, formerly the highest-ranking Negro officer in the armed forces, charged the Stokes administration with giving comfort and support to the enemies of the police. He gave no other explanation. Stokes had urged the city's safety director to reconsider an early announcement that he would quit the post after only 6 months. Davis said he had no appetite for public service at this point. The WBZ news time is 2.5 minutes past 9.
Hold your breath, close your eyes, taste an ice cream surprise. On a stick, in a cup, luscious fruit, crunchy nut. Hood's always ahead with a new taste for fun. Hood has a taste for fun, fun, fun.
In many newspapers this week, you'll find a coupon good for 15 cents on any flavor of any half-gallon package of Hood ice cream. Plus, a 10-cent coupon introducing new non-dairy frozen Hood whipped topping. Look for these money-saving coupons in your newspaper this week.
On a stick, in a cup, luscious fruit, crunchy nut. Hood's always ahead with a new taste for fun. Hood has a taste for fun, 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 fun.
Uncle, the winds are from the south at 9 miles an hour, the barometric pressure 30.02 inches and rising. The top story of this hour, Linda Kasabian spells out the details of how she became a member of the Charles Manson family amid a strong series of objections from the defense. And that's the 9 o'clock WBZ report with portions recorded. I'm Maurice Lewis for WBZ News, and now it's back to the Jerry Williams program.
254-5678.
Hello, America. This is Jerry Williams back, hour number 2 here on WBZ, The Spirit of 103. We're talking tonight about the Wall Street jungle. Richard Ney is with us. He's a former actor who turned his talents and his abilities to the world of finance back in 1961. And one of the reviews in the Los Angeles Times, who happens to be a fairly conservative journal, the gentleman who reviewed his book, Mr. Richard Buffum, has said with a surgeon's precision he carves a full-scale indictment of the ethics and methods of those who direct American money. Having read his book during the stock market's recent dramatic fluctuations, I've come to believe that a whole series of reforms he recommends should receive the careful attention of Congress. It seems clear to me that a lot of arbitrary manipulation has been going on in the market that is unrelated to the law of supply and demand. It appears that Ney's reforms, if adopted, could reach a long way toward creating a safe and sane auction market for every investor, and not merely the exclusive private club for privileged insiders which he describes. And that's what Mr. Ney has been describing for the last hour.
I mentioned before about specialist investment accounts. I'd like to take a couple of seconds and mention what the special study report of the SEC said to the SEC about them in 1963. It said, it seems clear that the segregation of specialty securities, that's by specialists, into long-term investment accounts is subject to strong possibilities of abuse without any corresponding public benefit or reason of effective regulation. And they cut over here, I'm cutting over here, and I'm finishing off with this from the special study report, where the specialist goes into the market with the intention of segregating the securities purchased and not with the purpose of creating a fair and orderly market. The trading is clearly contrary to the regulatory and statutory standards. In other words, it's against the law. And all the New York Stock Exchange had to say to the SEC was, further discussion of this matter is deferred, quote, unquote. And the SEC dropped the matter. Because, you see, when you have men like Ralph Saul, who were in the SEC before, and they conduct the investigation of the securities markets after President Kennedy's assassination, and they give a whitewash to a situation that should have sent practically every member of the Stock Exchange to jail, then you can understand better why this man from the SEC now is president of the American Stock Exchange.
Well, now, I can't understand why you say that. None of the traumas that the country has been going through, the war in Vietnam, the underfinancing of that war in Vietnam, I think one of our economist guests recently said if we don't maintain the tax surcharge, which we recently adopted or dropped, by the way, that we were going to be in serious financial condition. All of these causes and effects, so-called, you say have nothing to do with the...
These things are going to cause serious problems to the economy, but they don't have anything to do with the market. The market uses these things, the specialists on the floor of the stock exchange use these economic phenomena to alibi everything they want to do. Do you realize the problems are more severe now than they were 18 months ago? We spent more money in Vietnam since then. Our unemployment statistics show we have the highest paid unemployed workers in the world now. And yet the market is beginning to go up, and it will continue to go up, despite all these things, showing you that when they wanted to go up, it goes up. And when they wanted to go down, after they're sold out at the top, it goes down, because now at the bottom they want to accumulate again. And don't forget, they're making on the way down on the short side. They've borrowed stock at the top, and now they're taking it down, and they'll buy the stock back at the bottom, which they did, and return to those they borrowed it from, and make on the difference.
Yeah, where was the bottom in your eyes?
660.
660 was the bottom.
Yeah.
Now it's 730, is it?
That's right.
Thereabouts?
Yeah.
Is that where it's going to stay?
Oh, no, it's going on higher. You'll see it moving up to intermediate highs in November or thereabouts. Mm-hmm. That's when I said earlier.
Right, I understand.
When our big brother in Washington comes out and says they're going to be peace now, or lower interest rates, sell.
All of this manipulated,
unquestionably,
by certain key people that you described.
On the floor of the stock exchange. That's right.
You described a bit earlier, right?
That's right. Now, if you're not in the market, you don't need my book. Stay away from it, and stay away from anything to do with the stock exchange.
Suppose I want to get into the market. I got $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. I want to get into the market.
Then you better buy this book, because it'll show you how to exploit the larceny before it exploits you. That is one of the aims of the book. The most important aim is to get reforms so that you can go into the market safely. You should be able to. But what do you think would happen to the savings accounts in Chase Bank if people could go into the market and get, say, 8% or 9% a year on their money in the market? They wouldn't have any savings accounts, would they? So therefore, you find a situation in existence where even people like David Rockefeller don't want to see a steady stock market, because it would mean they'd lose a great deal of the money with which they leverage their loans. Savings deposits would be wiped out overnight, because the people would have the money in what was a safe market. Did you ever think of that?
Mm-hmm. Well, let's take the Joe average, will you? Since you've been advising people, I'm not asking for free advice, but let's take the average guy.
All right.
Makes himself $20,000 or $25,000 a year.
Yeah.
He has a nice family, 2, 3 children, whatever it may be. And he has a few bucks in the stock market. which is, of course, at this particular point in time, is not doing very well. He's lost a good deal of that money. Am I right?
He's lost more than probably three-quarters of it.
All right. And what should he do with what he's got on the market now?
As I said earlier, if he's in the market now, stay in the market.
Right.
And ride it to the November highs.
Sell.
And then in November...
No matter what they say.
Well,
that's what you're saying.
Yeah, but no matter what they say, when you hear them saying something wonderful, when they promise you a beautiful market up ahead, when earnings announcements come out and they say it's going to be a great year next year, sell. Don't sit around. What they're going to try and do is establish long-term capital gains for themselves at the end of the year. That's another thing. And they're going to use you by getting you to buy their stock at the high. Don't let them do it. Once they come to you with an opportunity to buy their stock without having to pay a commission, sell everything you've got.
What kind of a portfolio do you have?
That's another matter.
Everybody will want to ape what you're doing.
Well, that's for my clients. But the point is, I don't want to get into that because I'm one of the cannibals. I can take care of myself. But I can take it from the other cannibals. I don't want to take it from the little Joes. But if they're in the market, I have no choice. I'd rather send the shaft into the people that deserve it. But if the little fellow who's in the market now will sell out at the intermediate highs, we'll let them have it. If I can educate the country to knowing that when a big block comes out without a commission attached to it, and he's told by his broker to buy it, and he starts selling everything all over the country at that point, we'll lock them into the biggest larceny they've conducted for themselves that they've ever heard of. And they'll be stuck with it, and the little fellow will get out.
I'm not going to ask you what stocks to buy, but what kind of stocks
do you realize if I told the people to go in now and buy certain stocks, I told you before what happens when demand for stocks it comes in by the public. Those stocks don't go up, they go down. Demand by the public sends the prices of stocks down, not up. So if I came in and told them to buy this group or that group, and they bought it, they'd be saying, what kind of a jerk is that? Nay, he told me to buy that stock. Now look at it. It's gone. The day he said to buy it, the stock started going down, or the day after, rather. And that's exactly what would happen. And the more people that bought it, the further down it would go. How about that?
All right. What types of common stocks? I'm not asking you for specific stocks,
right.
because we're not allowed to do that anyway.
I have a whole set of rules in the back of the book. Buy secondary companies. Buy companies that haven't fully exploited their potential. Stocks and secondary and third-rate companies that have had good earnings in the past. You must understand that if look for companies that have had bad earnings recently with a good earnings pattern in the past and good prospects in the future. Because as that stock starts to go up with bad earnings, you will find, as a matter of fact, you'll find that many, many stocks go up with bad earnings that had good earnings in the past, go up with bad earnings, and then when they get to the tops, they come out with the good earnings announcements at that time, and that's what brings the public into them at that time. The public says, well, my God, it's been bad, but now it's getting good, I'm going to buy it. They don't look at the chart's pattern to see that it's gone from a low maybe of 30 to 60. They just buy it when they hear the good earnings announcements. And that's when they're trapped. And then the stock goes down to the accompaniment of good earnings. Look at Boeing a year ago. Look what happened to that in terms of its earnings. When its earnings went down, that stock went up. When Boeing's earnings went up, that stock went down. So look for stocks with good earnings patterns in the past and maybe bad earnings now, and watch that stock as it begins to develop an uptrend. Don't buy any stock until it is already in an established uptrend. Learn about the technical side of the market, because if you don't, you have no right in the market. And if you go in on the basis of fundamentals, good earnings, you'll have your throat cut.
Mr. Ney, is this a recession we're in?
It's a recession if you're sitting in the White House. If you've just lost your home and your company, it's a depression.
Well, that's, kind of a nice little parable, if you want to call it that. But
it's a big depression.
It's a big depression.
You said it, and it was brought on by the stock market. The stock market didn't follow it. The stock market caused it. Now, don't forget, if you have $300 billion of American taxpayer money being confiscated, as has been the case in the past 19 months, you have corporations going into bankruptcy because their stock, these men, 18 and 19 months ago, borrowed money at the top of the market to increase their inventories for plant expansion, and they put up their capital and their shares with banks to do this. Then when the market started dropping down, the banks said we need more capital to maintain these loans. Finally, the guy said, I don't have any more capital. The bankers then put that stock on the specialist books. The specialists saw that. And the end of May, he clobbered these guys by dropping his stock's price structure precipitously to the May lows, and then jumping it up as fast as he could so the public couldn't get in at the bottom, and so he could get all the shorts who he brought into the market at that point and squeeze them so they couldn't get out until the stock was up 50 points.
Where's all the money?
In Chase Bank, in the 30 to 50 inside men on the New York Stock Exchange, the special hierarchy among the specialists. These are the fellows
They
who have all the money.
that money.
Now you must remember
All that money?
all that money and more. Now, I want to point out something else to you. Oh, listen, they don't have to have $300 billion. But what they have done in the meantime is, you must realize, they can only increase their wealth as they diminish the wealth of everybody else. Now, they'll willingly cost you $100 if they can make $5. Now, the reason for this, and you're never going to find out anything about it, because you can't audit stock exchange member specialists' accounts right now. You know why? Do you have any idea? In 1912, the House Banking and Currency Committee, under Samuel Untermeyer, came out and said, the New York Stock Exchange insists it is not in business. It insists it is just an association of men, a private club, and they should not be subject to incorporation. He said, we can eliminate most of the evils surrounding the stock exchanges today if we force them to incorporate. From that day to this, the New York Stock Exchange and all the other stock exchanges have managed to evade incorporation. Once they are incorporated, as Untermeyer pointed out, they'd have to be subject to the penalties, examinations, surveillance of the states in which they were registered, incorporated. Until they do that, they're scot-free. We must make sure they become incorporated so that we can begin to regulate them. Brokers should not be allowed to act as a broker for you and a speculator for himself in competition with you at the same time. It's like putting your cards on the deck face up with his held close to his stomach. You don't stand a chance.
That's not very encouraging, is it?
It's not meant to be.
So they have all the money. I asked you long before the broadcast began, who is they? And
Now
I
you
found
know.
out, now I found out who they is.
And you must realize you can't hope for any protection from the SEC. Not when they're offered top jobs in the mutual funds. Not when you have a former director of the mutual funds, now president of the United States. Not when you have Wall Street lawyers as president and head of the Justice Department. You don't stand a chance, because Nixon came out before he was elected with a famous letter and said, look, fellas, you are not going to be regulated under me. And shortly thereafter, the stock market started going down because the signal had been given that it's a free-for-all.
What's the future going to be like? Besides your prognostication for the next 3 or 4 months, you say the market's going to climb steadily upward. Will there be any large graphs upward, or just a steady climb upward?
You're going to find they're going to be saying it's the election year, and that's why it's going up. Don't believe it. Now, I would not be at all surprised to see the market again next year after a slump begin to go up again to even higher levels.
Yeah.
But you can't tell at this point what's going to happen, and there's no reason why you have to guess, because if you're sitting on top of it, you can tell when the Fagans on the floor begin their legalized larcenies. It's obvious to any professional what's going on. And you'll tell at that time. And at that time, I'll be coming out again as much as possible. If I can only make networks. And so far, I've been kept off the networks. And so far, the financial papers, the financial pages of practically all the newspapers in the country are keeping me out of their pages. You realize the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, hasn't even printed one word on their financial pages about the existence of this book. And it's the first book that tells the real story of the stock market.
How about money? Interest rates, so-called tight money. What's the story with that?
Well, I pointed out to you before that when you have
Is it going to remain that way? That's what I'm trying to find out.
They're going to come down in November.
Interest rates will...
Interest rates will be dropped in November to encourage people to come into the stock market. You must realize this is the biggest floating crap game in history, and it's where billions are made. They're going to tie every government official up that they possibly can in order to make this swindle pay off. That's another reason you don't stand a chance. And Senator Clark, before he was kicked out, senator from Pennsylvania, said the biggest problem in the country today are our legislators, their law firms, their campaign contributions. He said it's the most corrupt establishment in the history of the world. So you find these men in Congress. That was in his book, by the way, called The Sapless Branch. I quote a part of it in my book. These men can be gotten to, and they have been gotten to for the whole of this century. Make sure your congressmen say what they're going to do, not about pollution, but about the stock exchange larceny before you put them back in power. And unless they come out and make this an issue, don't put them back in power.
Before we take some telephone calls, Mr. Ney, would you like to give me sort of a long-term or short-term prognostication beyond November? What you think, I'll ask you for your recommendations a little bit later on in a positive sense as to what can be done, what kind of new regulations are needed for the stock exchanges and things like that. But with the present system, you've now told me that November stock market is going to go up.
Look,
the money rates for money will go down.
That's right.
What else?
Well, you're going to find this happening. You find a lot of firms going public now. They're getting their hands on more capital.
Now?
That's right. A lot of brokerage firms. You're going to find a lot of specialists on the floor getting more capital with mergers with other brokerage firms. Now, they're going to use the excuse that they need this capital to service the market with mutual funds. But I pointed out to you before in this little brochure, they're out there right now trying to get as much of the mutual fund business as they can. The only reason they need more capital is to get more mutual funds and to get bigger blocks for their investment accounts. Now, once they have a chance with their capital, which they can leverage at a ratio of 20 to 1. In other words, if they have $1,000, they can buy $20,000 worth of stock with it. Once they get this additional capital for their investment accounts, you're going to find them dropping the market more severely than ever before, because they're going to have to shake out more investors than ever before in order to use up the cash they now have, the additional capital with which they can buy greater blocks of stock for themselves. So it's going to be bombs away over the intermediate future. By that I mean 2 years or so. You're going to see more fluctuations in the market than you've ever seen before, unless we can stop them with reforms.
And November, we'll see another high period?
We'll see an intermediate high.
Intermediate 770, 780?
Probably over the 800 level, just to get the public in the market more than ever, because they're going to say, now look, it broke through 800, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, that's what they're saying
it's going to be great.
Now they're saying now we're building a solid base for the future.
A solid base. They've got their investment accounts all locked in. Now they're going to build it up to the point, and they're going to tell you that the market's future is brighter than ever before. And when they start talking like that, and they're coming out with the good announcements, and remember, above all, you've got a chance to buy this stock without commission. Run. And remember, I told you, he who sells and runs away lives to buy another day. Tra-la.
Tra-la. We'll continue in a moment with Richard Ney, who wrote The Wall Street Jungle. If you'd like to converse, we'll get to some telephone calls now at 254-5678 here on WBZ. We'd particularly like to hear from brokers, people in the financial business, people who have some expertise in this area. We've been trying to reach, for a good portion of the night, the well-known mutual fund specialist Pierre Rinfray, and he also is an economist, former advisor to President Nixon, but we haven't been able to reach him tonight to get his point of view. Stand by for more here with Richard Ney and the Wall Street Jungle, and have a ball in Montreal. Come up to Man and His World, the original Montreal Expo. The free entertainment alone is worth a visit. This Saturday there's Dionne Warwick. In the weeks to come, Wilson Pickett, Johnny Mathis, Lou Rawls, Sonny and Cher, The Temptations, Johnny Rivers, Bobby Gentry, Jose Feliciano, and other greats. Have a ball in Montreal. Come to Man and His World, the original Montreal Expo. Open every day right up to September 7th.
The Black Label Brewmasters from more than a score of breweries round the world have a favor to ask. As more beer drinkers discover the great taste that comes from our international brewing skills, there are more and more empties. And as more of you find that wherever you go, Black Label is the one to go with, these empties are sometimes left as litter. So please take Black Label in keg bottles or tankard cans with you. but take your empties home. Let's keep America the beautiful. Don't litter her landscape.
Spirit of 103 WBZ.
The Spirit of New England, WBZ and WBZ FM Boston, Group W Westinghouse Broadcasting. Stay tuned for more of Richard Ney here on the Wall Street Jungle, the Jerry Williams Show at 2545678.
Hi, this is Kurt Gowdy for the Mutual Savings Banks of Massachusetts. Well, it's hiking time again. Time to get outdoors and take a look at what's around you. Hiking's really great. It's peaceful and quiet. Gives you the chance to reflect for a while on how things are going. When you have time to pause and reflect, it's a good feeling to know that you're prepared for the future. One good way to be sure you are prepared for the future is to save regularly at a mutual savings bank in Massachusetts. At a mutual savings bank, your savings earn steady, generous dividends that make your money grow. And while it's growing, every penny of it is insured in full and ready whenever you need it. You can count on it, too, because mutual savings banks have been paying those generous dividends for over 150 years. Through good times and bad, mutual savings banks have never missed a dividend. To be sure you're prepared for whatever comes up, start saving now at your local mutual savings bank, your family financial service center for savings, mortgages, home improvement and personal loans, and savings bank life insurance.
All right, I'm ready if you are at 9:30 on WBZ Radio, the Spirit of 103. Calls and comments from Mr. Richard Ney. Hello.
Yes, I was wondering what he has to say about mutual funds and something for an investment, so it's sort of like towards retirement. How much it would accumulate over a period of 10, maybe 20 years by a gradual investing into mutual funds.
Yes, wait a minute. Again, I'm a little upset by the question. We kind of glossed over everything Mr. Ney has said about the stock market, and you're asking me a simple question about should I invest in mutual funds?
Well, maybe the guy turned in late.
Did you tune in late?
I've been listening for some time. I don't know.
Well, haven't you heard what Mr. Ney has said?
In other words, he doesn't think they were a good idea?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm a little curious about the nature of the question.
Well, I've been listening, and I heard you talking about the stock market and the fluctuations and whatnot, but I haven't heard anything specific about mutual funds.
Okay.
Good. I pointed out an instance about half an hour ago where a lady called me and said, I bought Dreyfus, which is supposed to be one of the best funds, and I put up over $50,000, and I know you told me not to sell now, but I sold, and I got $30,000 back. She said, I'm sleeping better. What should I do with my money? I told her to buy U.S. Treasury bills, 10,000 each, 3 bills. I can only tell you that what you pay for a stock is oftentimes the amount of life you give in exchange for it. It ain't worth it. If you don't have the savvy, stay out. All right?
I know there's the same risk involved in mutual funds as there is in any other stock off the exchange.
That's right. You must realize, too, that these mutual funds, the management fees are incredible, and they take this right off the top. And if you become panicky like this little woman, now I can tell by your voice, the syntax of sound tells me you're a young guy, and you can afford to take it on the chin, and maybe even ride it for a while, and maybe you'll come out in 5 or 10 years with maybe 15, 20% profit. Who knows? If you have the money, then I would suggest you get these treasury bills at 7%. In 5 years, you've made 35% minimum. With compounding, maybe something in the neighborhood of 37 or 38%. The chances are you'll do better with treasury bills than you will with mutual funds. Now, that's investment advice. That costs you nothing.
Would you put a nickel on the telephone, sir?
All right, then.
Oh, thank you. 2545678. No, the reason I was curious about the question, I like to challenge people, not just kind of let them lay there, is that you said so many startling things tonight, and here's a fellow asking for really investment advice on mutual funds and kind of glossing over what you've already said.
As I say, maybe he didn't hear it when I said it.
He heard it. 2545678. Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, I'd like to talk to Mr. Ney, please.
He's here?
Yes. I find it very interesting what you've been saying. I'd like to ask you 2 questions, if you will, please. Will you tell me what it is that motivates you to really help out the little fellow like this to spill the beans on the whole stock market?
Well, let me put it to you this way. Again, you know, when you talk the way you did, I feel very warm. I feel very good about you.
Wait till the axe comes down.
No, he's not going to drop any axe.
Are you going to drop an axe on
No,
Mr. Ney?
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not hostile at all.
No, I want to tell you something now.
Yeah.
You are no different than I am.
Yes.
If you saw a blind man in a wheelchair going across a street with the red light, with the traffic coming against him, you'd run out there and try and help him and save him.
Yes.
And if you saw other blind men, just about the whole group of them about to take off and go across the street against the traffic, you try and stop them.
Yes.
Well, believe me, you are just like one of these blind, crippled men as far as the stock market is concerned.
Oh, yes.
And you don't stand a chance unless someone like myself is willing to come out and put it on the line and state what the facts are. You're going to get hurt.
Yes.
I can tell by the sound of your voice that you're an older man and that you don't have the means to risk losing in the market. That if you lose the money you've got now, you may have nothing left for you in a few years' time. Like myself, you get into your older age,
yes,
and you need your security.
Yes.
If you don't have it then, who is going to help you? Certainly not the government.
Yeah, yes, thank you very much. Well, listen, I wanted to ask you also this here. Now, I'm curious to know, with this vast knowledge you have of just how the inside works, you are able to get, you don't really have to worry about money. You can get a good income, right?
Yeah, I'm doing all right.
I mean, I heard you say that you take the other cannibals, but I mean, you can get as much money as you need, right?
I don't have any problems.
Yes. Well, I'm
one of the few people you've ever spoken to in your life who doesn't have one problem, who isn't unhappy about one thing except his ability to get this message across to the public.
Yeah, well, will you tell me one more thing? Why has it been so few people like you? In fact, there doesn't seem to be anybody that has done this the way you are.
Well, you know, when it comes to the financial editors, when it comes to the SEC, when it comes to a lot of important people in Congress, it's very difficult to get a man to say something when his income may depend on his not saying it.
But you did recently appear before Congress, didn't you?
I appeared before the House Commerce Committee in Washington on July 8th, and I spoke to a full assortment of congressmen there. Lord knows whether it's going to do any good or not. I tried to get them to kill the broker-dealer bill. That's what it's called in the House. Senator Muskie calls it the Muskie bill in the Senate. I sent this man 2 letters, one of them registered, telling him to kill the bill, that what he was doing was attempting to take the New York Stock Exchange off the hook for $1 billion or more, because the brokerage firms are going to want to keep the legalized larceny called street name stock. And if any brokerage firm goes under and the customers lose their stock, the New York Stock Exchange will lose immediately, a law will be passed, loses control over street name stock, so they're going to pay out anything to keep this legalized larceny. He didn't respond to my letter, Muskie. He didn't respond to either of them. I think Nader has got his number. Nader has penetrated where the rest of us can only observe. I think Muskie is in the hip pocket of the New York Stock Exchange, or he wouldn't be in there without even answering my letter. When I tried to appear before the Senate committee, they said to me, sorry, we're only hearing government witnesses now. Government witnesses, for practical purposes, are New York Stock Exchange witnesses. So, if you have any pull at all, certainly don't vote for Muskie.
Mr. Ney? Hello, Mr. Ney?
I'm right with you, brother.
Oh, yes. Just one last question. Now, if these reforms, as you are outlining them, if they were to put into effect, we would still have a good running stock exchange, wouldn't we? I mean, it would still work, wouldn't it?
If we could begin to put these reforms into effect, we'd have the beginnings of the coolest economy in the history of the world. We'd have capitalism, perhaps. We haven't had it in this country yet.
Oh.
As I pointed out earlier, when we just began, I said that what we have in this country is closer to dictatorship than anything else, that a dictatorship confiscates your money outright, that the New York Stock Exchange merely conditions you to think you made a bad investment, and they get your money that way.
All right, sir, we got to get on other calls. Thank you very much. Richard Ney is here. He wrote The Wall Street Jungle. Hello?
Yes.
You're on the air now.
Right. Mr. Ney?
Yeah.
Right. I'm a stockbroker.
Good.
And I'd like to take a little exception about what you've been speaking about. You certainly are making some very good points.
Thank you.
However, I think that stock prices are determined by 2 emotional factors, fear and greed. And the fact that most of the public loses money most of the time is that they always appear to be out of rhythm.
All right, now wait a second.
The little guy becomes very greedy.
First of all, you haven't read the book yet, have you?
No, I haven't.
All right, but you've made a fair statement. Now, are you familiar with what I pointed out before about demand sending the price of stocks down?
Definitely. I'm with you completely. It's,
all right,
it's
then
very little understood.
All right, now, wait a second. So what I said before about the blind, leading the blind into the market, is true. If a greedy public, and don't forget human nature being what it is, they're conditioned to even be more greedy by the stock exchange hierarchy. If they think that when Boeing comes out with the SST contract or anything like that, that they can make some money, and they pile into the market because they're greedy, as you point out, and then because of their tremendous buying, that doesn't send the price up, but sends it down. Who's the corrupt one? The man who buys the stock, thinking the demand will send it up, or the man who uses...
It's an opportunity. Many large shareholders don't sell until given the opportunity to
Now, we're not
sell.
talking about selling. We're talking about buying now. We're going to selling later on, if you like. But we're talking about buying right now.
Buying only occurs when there's a seller. And if a seller is accommodated, if there is buying demand for a particular stock, the sellers show up and say, well, this is as good a time as any to sell.
All right, now let me answer that. Can you hold on a second?
Sure.
Okay. Now, I pointed out, and I guess you weren't on the air. How long have you been listening?
Oh, about 40 minutes.
Okay, you missed it. Let me give it to you again. When you come out with the C5A contract, that's the instance I used before, the Lockheed contract, the specialist, how many accounts does the specialist have? Do you know?
Personal accounts?
What are they called? He has, all right, he has a trading account.
Right.
And he has an investment account, right?
Right.
All right. Now, what does he service the market with when you have a C5A contract? He services it with his trading account.
That's right.
Now, he may have as much as only $40,000 in his trading account. He may have $50 million in his investment account. Now, when he services the market in Lockheed, say, the price is 50 today, the announcement comes out about the C5A contract, this billion-dollar contract for Lockheed. The stock opens up the following day at 53. He does not have enough stock in his trading account. And so, what does he do?
He goes short.
How does he do that?
He just fills whatever demand there is at 53.
Wait a second, but how does he go short?
Against his own investment account, probably. Or he just goes short. He just sells stock that he doesn't have.
In other words, what he does, he goes to his friends, the Merrill Lynches, the Baches, the Hudsons, and borrows stock from them, right?
Right.
He then sells that stock to the public who came in to buy the Lockheed.
Right.
He does the selling, not the public. Right?
That's right.
All right. Then what happens?
Accommodates an unusual demand.
Let's go one step at a time. What happens after demand falls off?
Normally prices come down, and he buys the stock back cheaper.
How many points lower?
It could be anywhere from 1 point to 10 points lower to...
What happened in Lockheed? What did he do in Lockheed?
He covered it all the way down.
About 15 points.
Right.
He covered by buying about 300,000, God knows how many shares, off the tape for his other accounts, and then he returned it to the people he borrowed it from. Now, you can't possibly say that wherever there's someone buying, there's someone selling. When you have a situation in which the inner hierarchy generate great demand for their product and then supply that demand with borrowed stock or stock from their investment accounts, which they then sell out to supply that demand, and once they've got the public milk the public into the stock, once the public's demand falls off, they then say bombs away and drop it. Do you think that's fair?
No, obviously, I don't think it's fair, but we're
well, then you're on my team.
Examples of times where this has happened. And I'm not trying to say the specialist is a nice guy, as it happens.
Let me tell you something.
Dislike him as much as anyone else does.
Good for you. Let me point out.
I probably know a little bit more about what he does than most people.
Let me tell you this. There's a great broker, two great brokers in California, Herbie Moss and Pat Nerney. They're with Harris Upham. Herbie called me and said, Richard, this is a monumental work. It's much overdue. If we can get this book working, we can save our customers. He said, you only made one big mistake in there. You called, and I said, what is that? He said, you called Gus Levy, the head of Goldman Sachs, honorable man. Now, I want to point out that what I'm doing may indeed help you save your customers from going bankrupt, and that means you have tenure as a broker. The only way you can stay in business is if your customers stay in business. Now, the New York Stock Exchange is out to get your customers, therefore to get you. You stand off and don't let them do it. You begin to tell your customers to read this book, as many brokers are doing, because it's your only chance. Right?
It's possible that you're right, but again...
Oh, don't go any further.
Yes.
Save your scalp by staying with that and saying to your customers, look, I'm not sure about everything he says, but he does make some sense. I'm going to read his book. I'd suggest you do it. And every customer you tell to do that to and reads the book will say, gee, I got a broker who's trying to help me. Right?
Okay.
Thanks for calling, too. 16 minutes before 10 on WBZ Radio. Richard Ney is here. He wrote The Wall Street Jungle. If you haven't read it, you should. If you're a stockbroker and you'd like to get in the conversation or in the financial community here in Boston or in the banks, wherever, call up and challenge Mr. Ney. He's ready to take you on. At Stop & Shop, mini pricing saves you money on quality foods every day of the week, and the Maxi Men make your shopping a pleasure. Visit your Stop & Shop.
Schultz, you call yourself a mechanic? Tell me, who gives a 40,000-mile guarantee on brake linings, you Weissenheimer? Who gives a lifetime guarantee on shock absorbers and mufflers? Schultz, you dumb cop! Why can't you get it through your Canuck-First Canargan that besides seat covers, RADIO does brake linings, shocks, and mufflers with a guarantee that will knock your block off? Dummcock, you're not even listening to me!
I could listen to you forever.
Lifetime guarantee is the life of the car and means repair or replacement at these RADIO stores and all others. In Dorchester, 465 Neponset Avenue in Natick, 273 Worcester Road.
Let me tell you about a different kind of summer, the Virgin Summer. It's happening in a place so quiet, so peaceful, so uncrowded. People who go there want to keep it all to themselves. You can find the Virgin Summer only in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Those beautifully unspoiled Caribbean islands, drenched all day by sunshine, cooled all night by soft trade winds. During the Virgin Summer, you can have a quiet palm-rimmed Caribbean beach all to yourself, or glide silently over your own private reef in a glass-bottom boat. Scuba dive in the only underwater national park in the U.S. Right now, the Virgin Summer awaits you at very special rates, up to 40% less than during the busy season. And you're entitled to a $200 duty-free allowance in Virgin Island boutiques and shops. The Virgin Summer. Very quiet, very relaxing, and very reasonable. You can only find it in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Ask your travel agent today.
All right, it's 14 minutes before 10. Richard Ney is here. He used to be an actor, but boy, he's pretty good at what he's doing now. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
You're on the air, sir.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Ney, I was a bit late in turning on the radio on my way home this evening. When I turned in, of course, I guess you're at the point of the program where they had mentioned that you had terminated a successful acting career to enter the world of finance.
It wasn't too successful.
What I would like to know is, in what capacity did you enter into the world of finance?
Well, in 1961, I was trading at Bache & Company in Beverly Hills, and I was lucky, and a lot of people began following my trades, and the manager of the firm said, look, he said, when you're doing the things the way you're doing them, they're all going to be following you unless they have to pay for your advice. He said, your educational background, I was an economics major at Columbia University, qualifies you to become an investment advisor. He said, become an investor, it'll cost you $50, and then they'll leave you alone. Well, I paid the $50, became an investment advisor. I started writing my financial report right away. In August, Ralph Rivet of the Los Angeles Examiner came out in headlines with my forecast for the market. And he said in his headlines, Ney predicts market to go to 740 to 750 and then to crash. Time magazine came back at me and said, on what do you base that forecast? I then sent them where my view of where the 30 stocks in the Dow Jones average were going to go to their highs, and where they were going to turn around, and where they were going to go down. I missed telephone by 4 and a fraction points. The other stocks I got within 2 points. And when they saw that I'd called the market, and indeed where a great many of the stocks were going to turn around at the bottom and start going up again, when they came out in their June cover story on the market crash, they had a picture of me and a story of me at that time, and I was in business for good.
As a financial advisor,
As a financial
Yeah,
advisor.
okay. You're still acting in that capacity, I assume.
That's right.
You are.
But I'm not taking on any clients right now.
Currently have to your service.
I say I'm not taking on any clients right now because I'm trying to get this message about this book across. It's more important to me.
Well, yes, I know, but how many do you currently have?
Oh, that's my business.
I see. That's not public
That's
information.
confidential. I don't want anyone in the I don't want anyone on the stock exchange to know how many I have or who I have or anything.
Well,
All I can tell you is
a
I'm
fellow
right
as
now.
successful as you really can't afford to let out any of the trade secrets. One other question, if you would.
I don't understand your last question about the trade secrets.
I beg your pardon?
I don't understand what you mean about the trade secrets.
Well, the fact that you're evidently successful in terms of subscribers that you service.
Yeah, but I don't have my report any longer. But
Oh, you don't?
But let me tell you this: I've been talking to IBM just to give you some idea about programming my operation and data processing, so to make it easier for me.
I see. Another question here, if you would. You made the statement here that they are making all the money and you ain't got a chance, or words to those effect.
That's right.
That effect. I assume you were speaking of the member firms.
No. I was speaking of the public at large.
Yeah, well, the public at large
he was
doesn't
speaking
have
about-
a chance because of the role that is played by the member firms in that they position themselves many of the stocks that they might
No,
recommend.
I didn't
to
say
their
the member
clients.
firms. I said that in a hierarchy of the stock exchange, you must realize this. If I may take this a moment, there's no one a stock exchange member loves more than another stock exchange member. There's no one that he has a more intense. There's no one that a broker has a more intense hatred for than another broker. So, you find a situation in existence whereby a lot of member firms around the country who were able to get control of their customers' stock were able to use that stock to finance their speculations and their customers' speculations. And by, for example, if you have one group of customers, say Group 1, who buy stock on margin.
Yeah, well, I'm aware of that. The point I want to get at is the fact that other brokers, member firms, will speculate in the market. This is true or false?
Well, this is true, of course.
This is true. Okay. Now, I think that you try to imply that it is tough for the private investor to compete with these astute people, if you will.
I'm not at all saying about the member firms. I'm talking about the hierarchy of specialists on the floor of the exchange. You've missed the point.
Well, I don't want to talk about the specialists. I want to talk about the member firms themselves.
All right, go ahead, talk.
Well, ask a question that Mr. Ney can answer, because
the point is
the they that he refers to with the inner hierarchy of the exchange, he said,
okay, let's
and the
talk about
specialists.
the inner hierarchy of the member firm.
That's not what he said.
Okay, the inner hierarchy of the member firm, in that they may own, they of course own the firm, and the firm owns securities.
Yeah.
That their customers too may own. This is true.
That's right.
Okay. Now, how do you account, now I think you were implying that it is, again, very difficult for the public to compete with these investors. They too are investors.
I didn't say anything about...
I don't understand this statement in view of the fact that recently on Wall Street, a recent survey I read showed they surveyed 12 firms, and 11 out of the 12 firms right now are showing substantial losses. And a good portion of these losses are a result of securities that they own that are down severely in price.
All right, you want me to answer it?
What I'm trying to say is the member firms, too, their stocks go down as well as do those of the private investor.
That's right. I told you before that one of the reasons that a great many firms are going bankrupt is because the stock exchange sees that they're undercapitalized now and is cutting their throats. And once this Muskie bill goes through and the stock exchange member hierarchy itself is not liable for assessment, you're going to find a great many other member firm brokerage firms having their throats cut.
In other words, is your controversy more involved with the stock exchange than it is with the member firms?
Yes, of course.
It is. I see.
Now, but let me point out something, because you raise many interesting questions. And believe me, brother, I'm with you. You're a broker, obviously. Hello?
Obviously, you're right.
Good, all right.
And I work for a great firm, and I got to take opposition to a lot of the statements you're making here.
Wait a second. You don't have to take opposition. Just listen for a second, because I'm really on your team. You don't know it. But let me try and answer a couple of the questions, because I think I may be able to help you understand a little better. And I'm not hurting you by saying this, because you haven't mentioned your name, and I wouldn't want you to, because I don't want to hurt the people in your area. I want to help if I can. Now, you hear about a great many brokerage firms having hard times. Their profits are less this year than last year.
Well, in many cases, it's their own fault.
I know, but wait a second now.
It's not the stock exchange fault.
No, I'm not saying this. What I'm saying is a great many of the brokerage firms are hurting, but they're hurting because commission business is down, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Gotta listen. They're hurting because their commission business is down.
Well, this is true. That's
Okay.
because, wait a minute now, volume is down on the New York Stock Exchange.
All right.
But volume in the bond markets is certainly better. I mean, there are a lot of areas of the
Well, wait a
business
second. You're going
where-
off. I just want to go one thing at a time, and we're going to waste a lot of time unless you help me. Now, what I'm saying is their commission business is down, but what I'm also trying to point out, if you'll let me, is that the profits of many brokerage firm partners is up. The firm may be losing its shirt. In other words, the general partners and the people like that, the limited partners, may be taking a bath. But you've got to find out what Gus Levy is making for the Gus Levy Foundation in Foster Grant, what he's making for his trading account, what he's making for his different investment accounts. These things are never reported as part of the firm's commission business. The statements that are provided to the public have only to do with the commission business. It doesn't even include the big fees. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Hello? Are you there?
Yes.
Good. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, well, of course I do, but I don't agree with you completely.
Well, where do you disagree?
Beg your pardon?
I said, where do you disagree, friend?
I think that what Gus Levy does is personally his own business. If the man makes a profitable investment, that's his business.
What I'm saying, though, is you seem to miss the point. The point is the firms that these Gus Levys are in may be losing money in their commission business, but the insiders, the partners on the top level, are making fortunes for themselves, and you don't know anything about it.
You can't tell me that's true in this market here. You can't tell me that the partners of these major firms are making a lot of money in their trading accounts.
Have you
volume is down and the firm is losing a barrel?
Have you ever heard of short selling?
Have I ever heard of short selling? I certainly have.
What do you think they're doing in this market?
Now, just a minute. This is getting a little absurd. Now, how many people are sophisticated enough to sell stock short? Even partners of major firms.
The specialists are.
I work with a partner of a major firm, and this man has made many millions of dollars in the market.
Good.
His short positions are not 1% of his total holdings. And when you catch a market like we've recently been subjected to, my God, by the time you're convinced that you ought to go short, the market's 150, 200 points lower, and you don't dare short them.
Are you familiar with what Bill Meehan, the specialist in Ford, did during the market drop of 1962?
No, I'm not.
Well, if you read the special study report, you'll see where he said he was short every evening in Ford. Now that meant...
Well, again, this is just one man's opinion, but as an overall rule,
it does
not work this way.
This is not my opinion. This is in the special study report of the SEC, friend. Hello?
Yes, I'm on.
And now let me go to something else, because you're a good man to have on.
Please do, because I have one other item I want to touch on before someone else calls in.
What do you say about the instances where when the specialist system wants to get the big fees, and they come out and they print their little brochure and they give it to the big block customer, and in which they say, they provide an example of what they did for another big block customer, and they say to him, the trade was made privately, quote. There was no print on the ticker, no announcement of any kind before or after, no entry in the specialist.
What do I think of that function?
What do you think of that maneuver?
Well, I think that maneuver is very, very necessary to maintain a fair and orderly market.
I don't understand.
God, if you've got 50,000 shares of stock to sell, you can't hand it to the specialist. It's a good institutional department of a brokerage firm that'll find a buyer for that stock, and it'll be done off the tape.
No, my friend, this is something that the specialist is doing, not the big brokerage firm. This is an instance in where they've asked the specialist to come in and help them unload this. The specialist is saying, let me help you do this. I will do it, and no one will know anything about it.
Well, no, they don't say that. They go to the specialist because the specialist is the central trading spot for a particular security,
my friend,
or a particular stock.
Look, friend, you're saying...
knows where perhaps there is a buyer of 50,000 shares.
Friend, you say they don't do it. I'm just reading you from their own brochure where they say they do it.
No, I'm not saying that the specialist would not assist in placing a 50,000 share order or a big block order.
But what I'm saying is, what about the statement that the trade was made privately, there was no print on the ticker? Do you think it's right for them to have trades which are kept secret?
Why should it not be right?
What?
Why should it not be right?
Well, isn't every bit of information supposed to be supplied to the public? Why would they want to keep this information secret?
It's not made secret by the mere fact that there's a tombstone in the paper the next day that says they crossed 50 or 60,000 shares of stock. It's announced the next day in the
You didn't
paper.
hear it, friend. It says here, there was no print on the ticker, no announcement of any kind before or after. No entry in the specialist book. In other words, there's no record.
That sounds to me like that might be a violation. I'm not that familiar with that particular
Well, then
law.
I'd suggest you call the New York Stock Exchange because it's in their brochure.
Mm-hmm.
Good night, friend.
I have to break in at this point, and we'll return to the Wall Street Jungle and Mr. Richard Ney right after the news and weather. I wish you'd stand by for more. Mr. Ney has decided to stay with us for the next couple of hours because I can't get... Wow, what do I know? He knows. And we'll be anxious to hear from you at 254-5678 here on WBZ, the Spirit of 103. Stand by.
The main ingredient, one of the major discoveries in the Schaefer talent hunt.
Schaefer is the one way to have when you're having more than one. Schaefer, pleasure, doesn't fade even when you're thirsty down. The most rewarding flavor in this man's world for people who are having fun. Schaefer is the one way to have when you're having more than more.
And remember, the Schaefer Music Festival at Harvard Stadium brings you a great series of folk, jazz, rock, pop, and soul concerts live under the stars now through August 17th. Sponsored in cooperation with Summer Thing. Tickets are only $2. For complete information, call 492-5861.
Hi, this is meteorologist Don Kent. Want to get a high school diploma or study things like consumer education or sewing? You can do this and more at the new Urban League Adult Education Center. For further information, WBZ suggests you call Mr. Bill Thomas at 445-9450 or visit the center at 100 Warren Street in Roxbury.
Hi, this is Larry Glick, and I'll be seeing you in 2 hours on Radio 103.
The Spirit of New England, WBZ and WBZ-FM Boston. Group W, Westinghouse Broadcasting.
It's 78 degrees in Boston. Tonight's low will be back near 70. I'm Maurice Lewis reporting the 10 o'clock WBZ News. Chicago's Grant Park, that hosted violence during the 1968 Democratic Convention, is again the scene of turmoil. More than 2,000